Just start with a talk with Miigam'agan, our beautiful Mi'kmaq elder from Canada, not far from us, only separated by the imaginary line. But we'll start with Miigam'agan. Miigam'agan, go right ahead.
Walalin John, Walali o Hamsat Giskuk, Dumpkai Kudu Miguidelam Kikai, Gungi Gamina, Dandel Giskuk, Dandel Mawidaik, Chigisuk, Chijahamijina, Chiniskamijina. Mi wedem dandeligan muyak mi majuahan. Mi wedem dandelim malbukualiak iskuk. Mi wedem dandeligan muyak malgiganodi, nestuodi, iskuk. Eda wachtemai, mi widedem and would you sit hamudikuk? Would you abide dike? Mi widedem and gluguahan mina. Ach, debi gnaden and maulugudufinen. Abajuna harden and nuegadio, Abajaden and Galusuahan Minal and Luguahan Minal, Minaha Abajiankwe one and Ahabatle one and Gungi Gumina, down there Sijik, Sithamu, Kijino Mahamigil, Stohonk, Sibu, down there Sago, Ukdanuk, Koboho. Abachtuko. Nigea dan sit sisip, dan sit kulikwajich, liamko it'll nega one cord me jacken me ditch negamo sound. Uchit dawan niganus, nigangan nag imajuahan, nag chibichkam. Nigamo tahtalo, nigamo wahamadu distan desik sampan, hunt bisun, me walkik, Miigam'agan, Bugula demuj, Sesquich, Ginuk, Negamo, down uncle de midich, Sugohoi nibooked, Sugohoi mimajuahan. Aneka o stohonka ham so goi gidu a bedemog o chip mi maju dinan negmo e meskik eta wachta mai mi guide de menen negmo geginamo la de benik gungi geminahi nena sulti kup na duju. So I want to, in my mother tongue, I introduced myself, being a person who's been sustained in Wabanaki, and my clan being Jagech, and that much in acknowledging all the life that has been responsible in creating us and creating this present realm that we're in. And so the great mystery creator, all the life systems, our ancestors, our departed loved ones, and the ones who are yet to be here, that we're all together in so many different ways, and that we are all responsible for each other, to each other. I have much gratitude for all that, acknowledging all the ones who are still among us. We always talk about in past tense how our ancestors were guided by the deities, and who were guided by the mysteries on our sacred mother, but they're talking about the ones who've taught them how to structure their life, how to live on our sacred mother, they're all still here, which is the trees, our four-legged families, which is our clan, where our clans come from. The relationship to the spring holes, to the creeks, to the rivers, to the Abakduk, where the ocean where the sun comes up, and Ukdanuk, the ocean where the sun sets. So all our original teachers are still here with us. And so they are the ones where we receive knowledge and guidance. So they're still here, and we're still here. We're the ones that need to make that connection to receive guidance today. Last night, I as well, I was listening to Anishinaabe relatives sharing the prophecies. And so it was a reflecting back again of what was spoken about in the ancient times of what our ancestors foresaw and how they began to put their lifestyles in motion to synchronize with what was coming. And so we're here again. And so it's a wonderful opportunity to be witnessing this time in creation. And truly we're in the space, what we understand, we call now midwinter, but for us, we always knew it as Ahadigusk. And the time, at this time, we understand this experience as a book nugget. And it's the time in February when it's described when this sacred being has returned to bring nurturance, uplift us, warmth, and to fill us with what is needed in our own human development, our spirit. And so in many ways, a book nugget is being described and looked at as what the sun, our grandmother's sun, is doing at this time. She is at her most strongest element. It's the coldest temperature of the month, but the sun is the warmest at this time of the season. And so we're feeling the gift very much, a book nugget, bringing the warmth back into our hearts, because historically this would be a hard time of the season when our staples would be maybe, depending on the season, would come into the end where things are running out and so on. But it uplifts us spiritually, and so this morning we went out to the open bay and waited for the sun to come up and at the horizon. So this is the most important time, according to some of the young scientists, indigenous scientists that are among us, that reconnecting their ancestral teachings of, they would say we were, many people labeled us as sun worshippers, and but we understood that it's the time when we greet first light and greet our sacred sun. And just as up on the horizon, we look, and it's a time when the buguk, when we look into the sunrise, and then we are fed by her. She nourishes us through our eyes. And so we're always told not to stare at the sun, but it's so important to do this. This is how I feel. This is all part of the severing of our relationship to our spiritual teachers. And so we stare at the sun till she's fully above the horizon. And to do that again at sunset. And so there's, you can research on that. There's a lot there to be said, but I would encourage that. Maybe not so much when because of the debris or whatever that's out there, and not after the sunrise, or but at high noon, when the sun is straight above us, we stop for a moment to acknowledge the halfway mark or the halfway. Those are all very significant points for us. So coming back to this time, it's also when we're speaking in our language. If we were speaking truly in our language, we wouldn't have to spend so much time explaining and trying to describe or get you to understand what I'm trying to say, because in our language is already supports our relationship, both in the physical needs of our development, but our spiritual needs are also inclusive in our language. So it's very multidimensional, and each word is very instructive and descriptive. And so when we're talking about our relationship, and when we're speaking in our relationship, at this time we would be experiencing we're in the season where our mother, the feminine life, is in gestation, and so we acknowledge that in our language. And when so this time, Ahadigusk or Abijiganat is describing a time when she is going to be giving birth in few more weeks, March, in the spring equinox. And so this is a life cycle we are describing in our language of pregnancy and birth. So in the spring equinox is the great opening when all life is birthed. And so prior to that, and women notice when women are about to give birth, there is a burst of strength and energy that comes forth that brings us, that we start to nest and create a space for a new life. And so everything is prepared for that time, and we're encouraged to put everything aside and to focus on being of good mind, to walk in, to be the life that we're all dreaming of for our children, for our future societies. And so in that time, when the new life comes, we've already everyone already knows how to be around when the new life comes forward. And it matters because when we're in gestation, our ancestors would have spoken to us in a very mindful about a woman carrying, how we are to her, and what she experiences is how that life is being created, co-created. So this is what's our responsibility is, each and every one of us, how we want to be together and how we talk to each other, and it has to be founded on a heart-based way. And so when I think that's one the most important part of ceremonies. Of course, all ceremonies are important. But it's, I think when this great life is coming forth, how we want to be with our grandchildren is how, when the new life comes forth, it's going to matter who we are and how we are and why we are the way we are. We are all truly creators, and we're all co-creating this experience. And so the labor, the delivery, and the life of determines who we are and how we are as a community. And so this is what's happening in our language. If we're speaking, we would not be speaking history, human accounts. Our language doesn't have that, as it's always been the acknowledging the original teachers, and our cosmic family, the ones who are the ones who sustain our lives and all. So all the accounts, all the name places are all about the original teachers who are non-human and are the cosmic family. And that our responsibility to that way is to continually pay homage to that life. And we've been severed to only think about our human lives. And it's good to be express gratitude and be thankful for our lives, yes, but not to lose ever focus on what we're here for. And so we spent midwinter ceremonies mostly around 10 days or the whole season, the turn of the moon, at this time to connect with Abuknajit and to be in union with the experience, with the spirit, and in celebration. So I'm grateful to be here and to share this piece of one piece of my our understanding, and sharing the conversations that we had in our circles here at this time, and how important it is to connect every day, every morning with the sun at the time of the emerging from the horizon, to connect with each other through the eyes, and at sunset. So, and I see Nora is here, so I'll close off and pass back to John. And great to see you, Nora. I look forward to hearing your opening song. Walalio, thank you so much.
Walala and Miigam'agan, thank you so much for your words. So we'll have Nora up next, and Nora's Miigam'a, and she's going to sing our opening song. So whenever you're ready, Nora, just feel free, go right ahead and start singing. You're going to have to turn off your mute, though. You're still on mute. You're still on mute. On the bottom left-hand corner. Yeah. It's still showing the mute, yeah.
Nora, it looks like a little microphone, and if you click on it, it has a red line through it. It should come off and turn green.
It's not, bring your mouse to the screen and you'll see it pop back up, the video, start video and mute. It's not the lower bar.
There you go.
It good? Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
That's fine.
Technology is not my friend.
Feel free to go when you're set.
So, Nora, my name is Nora. My spirit name is she carries the sun in her heart. I had a major meltdown a while ago because I didn't know how to get on. I'm calling my grandchildren for help, and oh my God. You see, I was told when I was about 13 years old that one day the whole world will know who Nora Lagoa is. And when Cherry asked me to sing, I said, oh no, I can't sing now. Like something that I was told many, many, many years ago. But thank you, and thank you, Cherry. This song came to me, many years ago, about 24 years ago. And it's called the Grandmother Song. Grandmother, show us the way. Up in a distance, not many miles away, our people live there from life as we know it today. Grandmothers, can you show us the way? Take our hearts and hold them in your hand. Take our tomorrows, surround them with your love. Show us there is a way. Come back always, for they must teach us through our songs and wisdom. For if you listen closely, I am nearby. Hear the thundering spirits, the kindling hearts. Grandmothers, can you show us the way? Take our hearts and roll them in your hand. Take our tomorrows, round them with your love. Show us there is a way. Hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, ah. Hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, ah. Hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey, ah. Grandmother, can you show us the way? Hey, well, I was sitting all my cool. Thank you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. Mwah. Love you all.
That was worth the wait. Beautiful song, Nora. Thank you so much. And let all your people know that you did it. You got on successfully and sang to a lot of people. Okay, so the next person to speak is actually me. But I got one task to do really quickly so that people can see the closed captions. And what I'm going to talk about today is, my name is John Bear Mitchell, as you can see, and I'm from Indian Island, Penobscot, Kachimwan Miswal Nataliwis, Skijinawadu. My family clan is the bear and the crow. And I teach. I'm a teacher, and I've been teaching for quite a while and working in schools, working at the tribal school where I'm from on Indian Island in Maine, and now teaching at a university. And part of my job is administrating a native program. And so one of the things that I think is really important, and you've heard it here through Kevin, you heard it through Ron yesterday, and Miigam'agan, that education, stories are our education. They teach us everything we need to know. Our stories, in Niskipisuwin, he told a lot of stories yesterday, a nice chunk of stories, and they teach us about who we are, and they teach us about our history and our landscapes, no matter where we're from. Some of our stories are similar, even though they're distant in geography, but they're the same story applied to our local geography. And so we have midwinter ceremonies right now, as Miigam'agan spoke about. It's a time we tell a lot of the stories that really teach us. We have shorter days. We don't have to work as much. And, we're relying on our food cache for survival, as well as sporadic hunting and fishing. Obviously, our gathering is not happening at this time when the earth is asleep. But I was telling a story at the beginning of the winter that I want to retell now, because it really shows the importance of our connection to not only who we are today physically as we have to survive, but it really relies a lot on our ancestors and what our ancestors who were here before us, who walked on, but who are still here with us. They just walked out of this life, and we can't see them like we did, talk to them like we did, or eat with them like we did, but we still have them. That's really important. There was this man and woman, and they had two children, two small children. And not all of us migrated seasonally. A lot of people stayed on the coast during the winter because of the bounty the coast offered. Some people moved back into the forests on lakes or distant rivers during the winter so that they could hunt and gather there. And needless to say, those who did move away from the coast in the wintertime usually moved to these secluded lodges where they would store their food. They were sort of built half in the ground and half above the ground. They were probably down about 4 feet with a 2 or 3 foot log structure built around it and covered with the dirt that was removed from inside the hole, and heated with rocks. Rocks were heated outside during the day. At night, they were brought in. When the door was closed and the hot rocks were in and everybody was settling, that's what kept us warm. And it kept us very warm. It was very nice. And these lodges provided families with a real safe place, solid structures protected against the wind and the weather. But they were dark inside. and they only serve the purpose of being in there to shelter and to get sleep. So this man and his partner, this woman and their two children, small children, got in their canoe from the coastal area and paddled up north and inland using a series of rivers and portages until they finally came to the lake that they would stay at. And this lake was long. And at the very northern part of this lake was a small knoll with evergreen trees, pine trees on it. Pine trees were solid, big, sturdy structures. And right in there was their lodge, their winter lodge. And so usually, if they timed it right, they could get to the southern end of that lake before dark. And then they would paddle the next morning the length of the lake to get to their lodge. They didn't like to get there in the evening because they had to open it. Sometimes animals would make that their home during the summer, and they'd have to clear that out, remove soil from inside, try to make it livable for them. But they were ahead of the game this day. They got there mid-morning to that southern end of that lake, and they thought, we could paddle and get there before dark. We don't have to go in the lodge tonight, but we could get there before dark. Maybe we could get there earlier. The wind doesn't pick up. And at least we can get there and stay there, sleep under the stars, and the next morning just get everything ready for us for the winter, store our food and put everything away. So they decided to do that, and they went up that lake, paddled along the shoreline, finally got to the northern end of it. And when they got to the northern end of that lake, they still had about an hour of sunlight left. They were pleased with themselves. At least they could open the door of the winter lodge, and at least they could empty their canoe and get things ready. But the entire way up that lake, the entire journey, the man, he was hungry, and he was complaining about being hungry. He wanted something to eat. And from what the women say, this was not an uncommon thing. The men would always want something to eat. She said, just wait. Don't eat the food we have put away for the winter. Just relax. We'll get there. We get there. You can have something to eat. I'm going to cook something. We have some raw meat I'm going to cook. Let's not tap into our food source for the winter yet. We always had to be 10 days ahead on our food supply. She didn't want to start digging into that right off when you didn't need to. But he still complained. He knew he wasn't getting any food, but he complained the entire way up that lake. So finally, when they did get there, got out of the canoe, and he immediately emptied the food that they had prepared during the summer to put away for the winter. Those things that were smoked, dried, cured, that was going to be put for the winter supply of food. They took that all out. He took out the fresh meat that they had. They even caught some fish, took those out. So as he was emptying out the canoe, the kids were helping him, and they were also helping their mother. They were grabbing some sticks and getting some wood together as she was cleaning out their cook pit. And she lit a fire and started to cook the meat. And he was really hungry. He was talking about how hungry he was. He said, well, I have to keep busy. It's going to take a while for this food to cook. So he said, I'm gonna store the canoe for the winter. Because down on the left-hand side of that little knoll, there was a small swampy bog, not very big, small place. Provided them with some roots, some gilliswisk, and other things that they needed that were there, that they used all winter, the muskrat root, some plants that come from there as well. You want to be camping where your food is. And so he knew he wasn't going to need his canoe anymore, because everything he needed, he could walk to. He could hunt. in the woods behind. He could gather along with his partner in the little swamp next to the house, or he could fish in the lake. So a good time to put the canoe away. We're not going to need it. So he put it on his shoulders and he started walking down towards this little swampy area, because right on the edge of the swampy area, he had built this small platform. There were logs laying there and they were stacked in two different directions. And he would put his canoe on top of that, face down, so that the bottom of the canoe was facing up. And then he had some fir boughs that he could go get. Some of them were dry that were there from last year, and he started putting those on top of the canoe. They're bowed. Then he had bark that he had stored away. And he put that bark over that canoe, and some more fir boughs and some more bark. So no matter the weight of the snow that landed on that bark, it would compress those sticks before it would compress the canoe. So the canoe would be sturdy and strong the entire time the winter was happening. And so he put the canoe on his shoulder and he made his way down there. And as you know, with any swamp or any bog, there are small fir trees that get knocked down. They die and they get knocked down. And the animals jump over them. The deer and the moose, they step over them and break branches. So he was stepping over those. Must have been a good wind that came through sometime during the summer, because there was a couple of those trees laying there and the animals had come through and broken the branches off. So they were laying there like little spikes where these branches were broken off. And so he was being careful, stepping over there with this big canoe on his shoulders. Got to be careful. And so as he's walking over and stepping over these trees, he hit a soft spot on the ground and he fell back right onto one of these trees. He thought he fell on one of the trees that had broken spikes on it, the branches. But he gets up really quick, feels his back. There was no problem. He was kind of surprised. Didn't hurt himself, but he kept going. And he put his canoe down, carefully covered it. He was one of those people that really didn't like making canoes. He didn't mind repairing them or having to fix them in the spring, reseal them after they dried out. But it really was a long process to make a canoe. And he really didn't want to have to take the time to make another one when he could be hunting and gathering and resting with his family, watching his children grow and playing with them. So he did everything he could to make it nice. And he went back after a little while to their lodge. And when he got back there, his partner, she had everything cooked. The kids were eating, and there was a place for him to eat too. He went over and sat there, and she said, "Go ahead and eat now. I brought you everything you needed. I even put you a little extra there because I know there's good hunting back here, so I made you a little bit extra." And he just put his hands out. She thought to herself, okay, he snuck some food when he went down. That's why he went down there, to cover up that canoe. He snuck some food. He already ate. Okay, well, we'll have more stuff for in the morning. So she ate and packed up everything. It was dark now. They didn't go into the lodge that night, but they slept outside under the stars. And he laid down next to her, and the kids, they came over because they wanted to give their dad a hug, but he got up and he walked into the woods. She thought, wow, that's really interesting. He usually hugs his children. He seemed to be pretty much standoffish. She didn't say anything to him. She figured he'd get over himself. She didn't know what happened, what he was thinking. So that next morning, she got up and thought she'd beat him to the punch and get the fire going and start some cooking for the children for the morning, get them something to eat. But when she woke up, the fire was already going and he was already gone, had gone into the woods. She could see that he had taken his hunting tools, walked into the forest. So he goes into the forest and she stays behind, and she opens the flap of the house and She cleans out the inside. They had some stuff stored in there that they would use every single winter, some tools. Certain rocks they used to heat their lodge that were strong, could use them over and over again. You had to be real careful picking those rocks because you got the wrong ones and you heat them up, you bring them inside, and as they start cooling off, they explode and they send off little pieces of stones all over the place. It's the last thing you want to do. So when you find good rocks to heat your lodge, you keep them rocks as long as you can. She got those out. She knew she wouldn't need them for quite a while. In fact, they could sleep with the door open. They would just cover it enough to keep the small animals from coming in. And so she's doing all that work, half a day. And finally he comes back. And on his shoulders, he had a nice deer. So he started to skin the deer. She came over and helped him. He wasn't too talkative, so she wasn't too talkative. And again, he wouldn't eat. So she just figured he's eating while he's out in the woods. He's eating some roots, or he's eating some plants, or he's sneaking some food that she didn't know he had. And this went on day after day. He really didn't play with his kids, and every once in a while he'd go out in the woods, he'd bring back firewood, he'd bring back rabbits, he'd even bring back some gillis, some muskrats. He'd bring back whatever he could to feed his family. The snow had come. He would sit up pretty much all night while his family went to sleep, and then in the mornings when they woke up, he would be gone. And this happened day after day, week after week. And she had made a decision, because he was so cold to them. He was not participating in their lives, the lives of his children or her life. That when they go back to the summer village, back with everybody else, that she would have to part ways with him, that it was not going to work out for her. He would probably still stay in the same village. He'd still have a good relationship with his children. But it was obvious that she wasn't for him anymore, and he wasn't for her. She didn't feel the love anymore. But she was okay. She was okay with having him around, because he was still bringing food and firewood and providing fur from those animals. As much as he could do, he was doing it. He went fishing on the ice for them. He brought them whatever they needed, whatever they asked for. He tried to get it. But there were some days where he would just disappear for hours and come back and have nothing, no food. So they decided, this was the way it's going to be. She told him that he needed to sleep on this side of the lodge where the guests usually sleep, or if you had extra children. And so he did. And he spent time, and he got fires going, and he helped cook. He did everything he could do. Finally, the air changed, the wind shifted direction, and spring was coming. They could feel it. The snow was melting a little more each day. They'd get their hopes up that spring was coming, then it would snow again. But this snow was wet, and it would eat the snow that was underneath it. So they knew it was a matter of time. And sure enough, springtime came. And when springtime came, he came to her and spoke to her for the first time since they got there. And he said that, he said, "Zelma, I love you," he said to her. He said, "And I know I've been hard to deal with this winter. I know that I haven't been a good father or a good partner to you. But I want you to go back to the summer village with all your family, with everybody you know. I want you to greet the new ones that were born this winter, and mourn those who crossed over, left us, in this winter. Then I want you to come back and, if you would, and get me. Come get me. He said, and I understand you're going to part ways with me. He said, I could feel that and I understand it. That's okay. You need somebody who can be more with you. And she thought, how am I going to paddle that big canoe by myself, all the way down there and all the way back? And he said, well, come here. I want to show you something. So they walked around the corner over to the edge of that little swamp. And sitting there was a smaller canoe, a canoe that she felt like she could manage with the two children and whatever they needed to carry all the way back, and definitely managed by herself coming back to pick him up. She said, I thought you hated making canoes. Is that why you've been gone sometimes? Sometimes you go into the woods and you come back with nothing. You've been making this canoe all winter? He said, yeah, I have. I've been making it off in the woods. I built this for you because I knew what you're thinking. And I want to make it easier for you. So she said, it is perfect. This is one I can use beyond just bringing the kids back and bringing you back. He said, yeah, that's what you can do. He said, it's yours. And she said, okay, I'm leaving tomorrow morning. She said, now that you understand what our life is going to be like down the road, you can, you can have that your way. So we said, okay. So he helped her load the canoe and next morning and the children, and down that lake she went. And he knew she was coming back. He wanted her to come back and get him. She figured it was just so that he could spend time with her for his own sake before they parted ways. She was okay with that. They could still be friends. She still had that connection to him. And plus, he was the father of her children, and it's a lifetime commitment in that relationship. And she knew that was part of the process. And so she went down, got to the village, and explained that, he was still behind and that she was going to go back and get him. But when they showed back up, they were going to part ways. And so she enjoyed the spring ceremonies and acknowledged all those who had passed on and welcomed all those who had come to this earth as children over the winter. And when that was all done, she got back in her canoe and made her way back to the winter lodge. It took her a little longer. She took her time. Her children stayed back with her family. She reflected, enjoyed the time she had by herself, and finally arrived during the evening, a few hours before sunset, to their winter lodge. She got out of her canoe and she had seen everything that he had piled and stacked up neatly to fit in the canoe. And she looked and she noticed that the lodge had been all closed up. Everything had been taken care of and it had been all closed properly and things stored. The grounds cleared. So she figured, well, we're not staying here tonight. He completely has packed everything up. So she loaded it up in the canoe and she waited for him. He was nowhere to be seen. So she waited and she waited and she felt like, oh no, if we don't get down the end of this lake by nightfall, I'm going to have to stay here. He's got everything packed up. I'm going to have to unpack some of this stuff. So she walked around and she started to holler for him, started to yell his name, and he never answered. She walked in the woods a little bit. She found a path and she walked that path. She found where he made the canoe. She could see that. And that was an interesting place. It was messy. So she walked back to the lodge figuring, oh, he's got to be back there. I must know I'm back. When she got back, he wasn't there. So she walked around again looking for him and she's thinking, now we're going to have to unpack. And she was getting a little bit angry after all that. So she walked down to the edge of this little swampy area and where they gathered the roots, where the little bog was. And she came upon this pile of fir boughs and birch bark, and so she said, "Oh, this is the canoe. This is the other canoe. Should see if this is still good." So she started to take the bark off and then the branches, and she stored them nicely. She piled them nicely because they could be used again. Probably not by her, but at least by him. And so she stacked all those, and she got down to the canoe, and she started to feel the canoe. The ribs of the canoe were really good. They were strong. The bark was still good as well. It just needed to be resealed. When you store canoes that long, the seal that's used on the bark to keep the water out, that needs to be replaced. Sometimes scraped away and replaced, sometimes just replaced, sometimes just patched. And she lifted the canoe to look inside. And when she rolled that canoe over, there was her husband. He was laying underneath it. And from the looks of it, he died last fall. And that's the end of that story. And that story has a lot of meaning in how we take care of our people during our death in the spirit world, what we consider death here on this side in the human world. You see, when he went to take that canoe and he fell on that tree, he impaled himself. But his spirit was so strong, he knew that she could not take that canoe and load it up and get back to the summer village to be with her people. He knew that wasn't going to happen. That even if she tried, there'd be a lot of danger that time of year. So he stayed instead. And he took care of his family the entire winter. We can't physically touch the spirit world. Spirit world does not eat like we eat. Instead, we set them a plate and we offer it out to the animals. The animals will eat it. They take it into the spirit world with them. So we stay with our people, we stay with our relatives as best we can. And that's why when we pray to our relatives, because they were once here with us and they understand that we need to be taken care of, and they have a lot more strength than we do here on this earth. And so they do what they can to help, and he did everything he could do. He couldn't talk to them like we talk to each other. Instead, he was just present. And he probably felt horrible that he couldn't be there, that he couldn't hug his children, that he couldn't eat with them, and that really he couldn't communicate with them like he used to. But he did everything he can to help get them through the winter. And that's what he did. And we really need to kind of consider in these stories, how do they even come about? Who is the first storyteller? Who's the first person that ate a lobster? Who's the first person that ate a muskrat? Somebody had to do it. Somebody had to put that out there, be challenged a little bit. But Chibalok, in the stories that I grew up with my elders, Juanita Purley and Marge Purley and the wards up in the Miigam'agan territory, the elders that myself and my sister Shelley worked with were really, really strong in that our stories really teach us who we are. So I want to talk for a little bit. I have a little bit of time left, and I want to talk about the first storyteller. And before I do that, I am going to switch transcribers. No, I don't have permission to do that. Okay. All right. Okay, I see that I don't have. Okay, never mind. Forget that. But I want to talk about the first storyteller, because I think this is really important. I think everybody that's listening right now should understand that we all have stories. You do. Everybody does. Each and every one of us has stories. Chibalok was an old man. He was an old man that forgot to pass on. He forgot to die, if you can imagine that. He had this place in one of our villages, and sometimes a lot of people would come and listen to him tell stories. Every morning he loved to tell stories before the work day began. You kind of want to avoid telling stories while you're working, because you might get behind. And as a hunter-gatherer society, you get behind on your work, which is preparing food for the winter. You get hungry in March. The end of winter is a real tough time. When those bears wake up, you guys are competing for the same food. And so you don't want to waste any days while you're hunting, gathering, preparing the food for the winter. It's the first thing you do. When spring breaks and you can get out there and you can start getting food, you start preparing for the next winter. It's what it's all about. And so he had this little place. It was a little off to the side of the village. He didn't like being around everybody. He didn't want to be in the community. He'd be off the side. And he was down at the bottom of this little knoll. And in fact, the little hill in front of him acted like a little place where people could sit and listen to him tell stories if they chose to come down every morning. Some people didn't, mostly children did. He'd tell them stories, and they'd learn a lot about where they're from and why land exists and how animals are the way they are. And they would also learn the values of our wampum law, what to do and what not to do, how to behave. And so he would sit there, and he had this one little stump that was high enough where he could lean against it, kind of sit on it like a stool. And then right on the ground, there was his footprints were burrowed into the ground where his heels would dig in, because he liked to laugh at a lot of his jokes. And when he did laugh, he leaned back on his heels. They would dig in, and he thought he was funny. So, he had that spot. Sometimes the people would laugh with him, but sometimes he'd laugh by himself, and that was good. That was okay. Every morning he'd tell those stories. One particular morning, some people went down to listen to him talk. They grabbed some of their breakfast, and they went down to listen to him talk, and he wasn't there. And this was the first time they ever heard of that. Their grandparents talked about how he was always there. Their parents talked about how he was always there. He always beat everybody up. Everybody in the morning, he'd beat the earliest riser, and he'd be there. Sometimes people would challenge him, and they would lose. He'd be standing there. And so they stood around, and they were looking like they didn't know what was going on. They looked at his lodge, and his flap of his door was still closed. So they went over, to each other, and they were talking, what do we do? Well, one young boy, he said, I'm going to go knock on his door. And they said, oh, he's, I don't know how that's going to go. Is he going to be mad at you? He said, it doesn't matter. I can run faster than him. So if he gets mad at me, I can take off. He said, but I need to go see why he's not out. So he walked over to the side of his lodge and banged on the side of the lodge. And there was nothing, no voice, nothing, no rustling inside. He thought, oh no. Is he okay? Did he cross over last night? I don't want to open that door and be the one to find him. Kids. But the boy was concerned, and he banged again. Mosum, he said, grandfather. You could hear this voice, this weak voice inside say, what? The boy said, oh, you're okay? He said, yeah, I'm okay. Chwe, Gus, come in, son. Come here, son. So he went, he got inside and sat down, and grandfather was laying on his little bed. And the boy said, "Hey, grandfather, you look all right. What's the matter with you?" He said, "I've just been laying here and I've been thinking." He said, "I've been telling stories for a long time. I told stories to your great grandparents and their grandparents. And it seems like I'm the only one that's telling the stories. I'm just starting to realize that after all this time, all my people, I'm homesick in my own home because all my friends, all my people I knew and talked with, they're gone. My children are gone. I'm lonely." And the boy said, I understand. That's probably hard, grandfather. And grandfather said, tomorrow morning I'm going to tell stories. It's really important. I got a really important story to tell. Put word out in the village that I want to talk to everybody that wants to listen to me, even other villages. If somebody's traveling today, you tell them to bring people to listen from the next village if they want to. But no matter what, we all got to get this message out. He said, tomorrow I have an important message for everybody. So the boy said, "Okay, grandfather, I'll do that." And he left the lodge. And he informed everybody about what grandfather said. And people were quiet that day. They worked really quiet. They were wondering what was going on. What was grandfather going to tell them? What message was he going to deliver? It was people were a little bit nervous. This seemed important. This seemed urgent. Well, finally, the next morning came and people started to gather. And of course, grandfather was already sitting there leaning against his log, his stump, feet dug in the ground, arms crossed across his chest. Hair was everywhere. Medjawad, he never combed his hair. He didn't have to. He wasn't looking for a bride. He wasn't trying to impress everybody. He felt, I don't need to comb my hair all the time. And so he was just standing there looking a little bit disheveled, But he was grandfather, everybody loved him. So when everybody was there, he said, "I'm glad you came. I'm glad you all came here to listen. Because I have a very important message for you." He says, "It's regarding our stories, the stories that teach us everything we need to know, our ways of knowing, the things that are important to us, why our animals look the way they do, and Gluskub and what he did for us, and all of the things we need to know are in our stories. But I find that I'm the only one telling them. I just realized that I forgot to pass over. I forgot to cross to the other side to be with the people I knew growing up. And I'm homesick in my own home. It's lonely here, even though I love you all. I need to go. But I can't. And I think this is what's been holding me back, because I have not heard the stories being told." He said, "Picture this. Imagine this. All the stories of who we are, all the stories of who you are, and who your families are, and your clans, and the roles we play in our history. They're like lightning bugs, little lights above us, flying around our heads. Thousands of them flying around your heads right now. Do you see them? No, you don't see them," he said. "I do. Each one of those lights is a story. And some of them are fading away. They're almost out. And when they do go out, that story dies. It will never be told again. It's forgotten. It's a piece of who we are that we let die. And it didn't want to. It didn't have to. Every once in a while, I take one of those dull lights, that story, and I bring it inside me. And I tell that story, and it gives it new life, and it's bright again. And I think The reason people don't tell stories is because they're afraid they'll ruin the story. They are afraid they won't hear the story because they didn't tell it or convey it like I do it, like me. But that doesn't have to happen. Everybody tells a story how you tell a story. It doesn't matter how you tell it, you just keep it alive. You give it brightness. And I'm tired. I'm tired of trying to take all those stories that are almost dark, almost out, those little lights. I'm burnt out. And I'm leaving today. I'm crossing over. So it's now up to everybody that's listening here. Everybody is responsible. You have an obligation to your people, to your history, to yourself. To every once in a while, grab one of those stories with your mind and tell it. Tell it to your sister, your brother, your significant other, your grandchildren, anybody who will listen. Tell it to yourself. And then let it go. And it's bright again. It's the responsibility now of everybody here to carry on those stories. And you can do that through song as well. It's time for me to go, he said. But I have one more message for you before I go. And as he's saying this, he's starting to become translucent. He's starting to turn into almost a fog, a mist, and it's floating because it's lighter than air. He said, if you need me, you call my name, Chibalok, and I'll come. Sometimes, though, it might take me a while. And as he's floating up and up, they could see that he was turning into some shape, the shape of a bird. And they watched him. And he said, my name is Chibalok. You can close your eyes and you can pray and ask me for help. But then again, you can close your eyes and you could just thank me for something. Thank Creator. You don't always have to ask for something when you pray. You can be thankful too. Be thankful you opened your eyes in the morning. Be thankful you close your eyes at night. You have another day. You have another opportunity. You have another chance. But if you do pray for something, I'll bring it to you. And they noticed now that he was in the form of a white eagle, a spirit. He was the spirit of an eagle. Chibalok was now up there, and they watched him, and this was beautiful. And he said, when you do ask me for something and I do bring it to you, I'll bring it to you in your dreams. The answer will come, but I'll have it in my talons. And when I come to you to give you your answer, if you turn from me, if you recoil because you're afraid of me, I will take your answer back into the spirit world. And it'll be a long time, if ever, will you get it again. Because I'm sure I'll be delivering a lot of answers to a lot of people. So never reject me. Always accept me. And sometimes when I do give you your answer, you might not know it right off. It might take you a while to realize you have your answer already. And that's the story of our first storyteller. And it's our responsibility as humans to carry our story and tell our story. And to tell our family story, our clan story. And to tell the story of our people. It doesn't always have to be a serious one. It can be funny. It can be scary. It can be serious. But that's why we're still here today as Indigenous people. We're here because we have our story, because we have our ancestors standing beside us with their hands on our shoulders and their wishes for us to do well. So I have just completely chewed up my 45 minutes, and I will pass on to our next speaker, who is Shelley Charles. So Shelley, feel free to start in anytime you are ready. I will wait for Shelley. As we're waiting for Shelley, I guess I'll just I guess I'll just keep talking.
Here, just
Okay,
here.
Shelley, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning, everyone. Minokishab. I'm going to start off. I'm going to start off with a smudge. And start my day off with a smudge. Weh'na bojo. Sego ani. Kwekwe. Danse. Liwin. Mandakwe. Mishomisananik. Gokemisananik. Mandakwe. Indigenous cause. Minwa wawate si. Joniang minising and donjaba. Gigon muskenoje and do dam. Minwa neoshi onigiming and donjaba. Gaye no jamawaning. Nongum gijiga gegwajimi go na the madis gije manado on the martian. Minwani when Danamak Noden and Waban, Jawan, Ningabi, and on Minwagi way no Gayoshka bear with some other Biashquanding on other madis or not the martian. Migwech Mishomisananik, go Commissionanik, Migwech go Kenagego Gamijian, Kinaway Mana Kegashin Diane. Nongum Gijagak Mukwagizis on other madis or not the martian. Ajawena mission, Joanna missional, Nikonagana. So with those first words that I sent up, they're in Ojibwe, Anishinaabe, which is my first language. And Mandakwe is the name that I was given as a child. Mandakwe Indigenous cause is it's a woman of wonder is the name that was given to me by one of my uncles and Neashingaming, which is also known as Cape Croker. And I mentioned in those first words, Joniang Minising Ndonjaba. So that's here at Lake Simcoe is an island, and we're called Chippewas of Georgina Island, but we know this land and this water as a Joniang Minising. And that is the way the water has this shimmering, shining way about it. And I mentioned also in those first words, I addressed our relatives, Mishomisananik, Gokmisananik, and offered the fire for lit the fire. And for me, when I do that, and today I'm using sage, is for me to remember that and acknowledge and honor that first fire of creation, and to always be trying to lift up our words and our thoughts in a really good way. So I'll always have a smudge before I share words. It's so important. It's really important for me and for us now, especially that we are able to share our teachings with each other and also to connect in a good way. One of the things as well, Swe Midewin, I didn't say that. Gagege Anishinaabe Kwe and Dao. I'm also a Midewin person, and Midewin, as many of you know, is those are the teachings of the heart. And I also acknowledge the 4 directions. And in acknowledging the 4 directions, once again, I always try to bring that back to our story of creation, the Ojibwe Anishinaabe story of creation. And in acknowledging the 4 directions and the names that those spirits have been given, Waban, Jawan, Ningabion, Giweden, to acknowledge their names, but also the gift that they've given to all of creation, the gift of vision and relating and knowing and doing, and the gift of movement and coming together, which is what we're doing today in that virtual spiritual circle, which many of us do pretty much every day. And then finally, in those words, Miigwachgo Kenegego Gamijian, is to be thankful, always to be thankful. And it's really important for me to send those words up as a reminder to myself, but also to remember the gifts that I've been given and what I can try and share, and the voices and of the elders that I work with, to try to lift up their teachings as well in a good way. So kinagego gamijian kinawemana ke gajindayan, always to lift up those gifts in a kind way. So Chimigwech for that, for the invitation to be here today. And I'm going to, I was trying to think about what I could share today, because we know this time as in Ojibwe as this month, besides being my birthday on the full moon, we know this time as Makwagi's, and also Namebinigi's sucker moon as well. But the Makwagi's is a time, as I've come to know, that is that time when the bear who has her cubs there actually physically turns her body to block that doorway, and then she goes back to sleep. So she's still doing her work in her den while she's half awake, half asleep. So Mukwagizes is really a special time for us here as well, because it's the time of sharing stories, sharing our teachings. And also one of the things that I reminded my students about too is it's a time to practice and to share teachings that you've heard, to develop leadership skills for our young people, and to give them the opportunity to share with us and lift up what they've heard us teaching, and teaching with them in the circle. So as I was thinking about that, it occurred to me that I'll just share what I shared with them a couple of days ago. At this time that we're in, students are asking a lot of questions. They're asking about, you know, how does this culture help me? How can this culture help me today? They're asking about grieving, and they're asking about their actual beings, and they're wondering about personal value, and how can our teachings help inform them as they start to move into the next stage of their life. So for me, I received a lot of teachings and walked many, traveled many years with Onavanese, who you know as the Gichiaya of our lodge. He's the elder of the elders, and he is one of the very few who can translate our teachings in a way from the language and into English in a way that we can understand, but also in a way that we can find a path that we can lift up those teachings and share them on further. And the whole notion of 7 generations in the prophecies, those are the teachings that I've received directly through him, and also other teachers that I would like to acknowledge as well. Badwe Widan Benes Ba, and Baja Dagamigo Kwe. Baja Dagamigo Kwe was my grandmother, and that's the one who connected me with, well, she connected me with my life, really. She saved my life, and then she began to teach me as much as she could before she left. And this time of the year, especially for me, is I feel really close to her, my grandmother. And it's been a long time. It's been a long time since she's been gone, but I feel her really close. Mukwagizes. She used to make a big celebration about my birthday as well, and she would save raspberries. So when it was time for my birthday, and she would have a little dinner up there on top of the Bruce Peninsula, on those bluffs. I was always so excited because there'd be this little jar of, if you've ever preserved raspberries, you know they're one of the hardest berries to preserve because they can go mushy. I know that because I think I did that to a whole pan once. But I was always so excited because she would have that little jar of raspberries for me. And to me, that was like just a real gift of love. So during February now, when I think of her, is I remember picking berries with her while the bears were in the berry patches. And I remember one particular time that always, it's so clear to me, like it was yesterday, is we were picking the raspberries And you know, there's bees there and you're doing your thing and they're doing their thing, amu, so they don't give you a sting, which they're not interested in doing anyways. So I said to her while we were out there, I was like, oh, there's something really big on the other side of the raspberry bushes. And she said, yeah, yep, she's been there for a while eating. And I got really nervous about it. And she got out, lit a cigarette. And she said, well, you better sing so she knows where you are. We still have a couple of more buckets to pick. And that's what we did. And I wasn't afraid. I wasn't afraid of being in the bush with her. I trusted that she offered that tobacco. And I trusted that each one of us had a responsibility. That bear had a responsibility as well. And she had a responsibility, to me. And that bear came back to me afterwards as well. And it would turn out that I would harvest that bear, and which is another story. Harvest the bear for the medicine that's below the fur. So when I think of Mukwageesis and this full moon that's coming up, I feel really blessed when we say at the end of the words that I shared and lifted up, Weh'na Mishin is talking about blessings, and we're giving blessings and sharing blessings, and it goes out and it comes back to us. Our breath goes out and then it comes back to us. And I think that while I know that I have been truly blessed by having her in my life. So it's pretty cold here where we are. It actually got really cold during the day yesterday, and they've been flooding the ice road, which is a whole other story. Ice roads, pretty exciting. But so those were my opening words. And I also want to thank my relative, Shelley, for inviting me to be part of the circle again. And also, John, I was really appreciated hearing you acknowledge the elders where you received teachings from. Many of us who have received teachings from those elders as well, because I feel like when we say their names and we lift up their names, we're bringing them their teachings from their past to our present. And also in the doing of that, in the honoring of them as elders and teachers, but we are also kind of like reaching back, and we're remembering some of those teachings and some of those words and some of those songs that they shared with us when they walked here. So we've got such a fullness of teachings, then it's also an expression of love, of deep love, de Bwewin. That's how I've come to know Gagige Mikna Sing, which is this forever life road. And it's how I try to be. So I'm gonna share a little bit of the life road teaching, and also just before I do that, I have to acknowledge my clan relatives that are out there. I am Fish Clan, Gigon, Fish Clan, Gigon Dodem, but specifically from here, Jonyong Minising, I'm Muskie Clan. And the river here too is named Muskinoja, although they call it Muskinonge and different names like that. But I know there's some Fish Clan people out there because I could see you. The Fish Clan, I also said that in my introduction, it's part of my identity, part of who I am, really significant part of who I am, in that I have tried to lift up those characteristics of being a Fish Clan member. So some of those characteristics include being a mediator, which I'm having 2 boys, I'm pretty good at, and but also a philosopher, those ones that are we like to tease each other in our clans, and the Fish Clan are the most intelligent. And then Murray Sinclair is, yeah, that philosophy there, that'll play games with your head. But I also had a degree in philosophy, Indigenous philosophy as well. So I've tried to, in my life, live up to my name and my clan. And in the doing of that, no matter where I go in Turtle Island, whichever community I go to, I always feel at home. And I say to the students, those that know their clans, is when you go to a community, ask people, where are the Wolf Clan members? Do you know any Bear Clan members? And go meet them. You'll never be alone wherever you go. Connect with them. And they are your relatives too. They are part of that sacred relationship. And when I'm thinking about the clan too, and the Fish Clan, and working with young people, I'm reminded of that I've come full circle in my life. Now being in the elder life is my grandmother instructed me many years ago to go and pick some medicine, to go and work with the grandmothers. Actually, back then it was referred to as Ginyange, to our Seneca relatives, who I knew didn't know anything about at all, really, and was very confused. But of course, you always had to do what your grandmother told you. So I went there, and it was a very big part of my life, big crossing the border, and then going and finding the women that were harvesting the sassafras. And I was really nervous because they were Seneca people. They were different than us. They spoke a different language. But when I went into that clearing, and there were women wearing kerchiefs, and they were banging the bark and putting the bark in bags, and I told them who I was, and that my grandmother had sent me. And I'm going to try not to get emotional. And they said, oh, okay, we have some more helpers. We have another helper. And I felt so welcomed. And I told them that I was Fish Clan. I felt so welcomed, and I just went to work. So in my life, I feel like I've come full circle, because I'm now working with Ongwehongwe relatives and learning about some teachings and how our Anishinaabe and Ongwehongwe knowledges and teachings of creation complement each other, and those places where we can come together and lift up that good life. So I just want to share that. there's a song that I want to share, which is also known as a prophecy song. And there's a number of prophecy songs, and some of them we don't share. And this one here was recently shared with a friend of ours who's actually Oneida, and she was Oneida. And I wanted to share that today because for me, it talks about us coming together so that where we are now is exactly where we're supposed to be in this moment. And that we have to, come on, let's go. It says, Ambe maja da jibwa bida bang. Come on, let's go before the dawn. Miigam'agan ga inagan ba. So we are known by those, what we are known by what those teachers in the past were talking about. We have been talked about back there to our present. We have been talked about, and now that it's time for us to come together and from all directions, from all the 4 directions, and to put that bundle, this is how I understand the song, is to put that bundle of knowledge together for the future, for today, but also for the future, so that our young people will know what that means when we say Biskabiyon, when you're reaching back, and it's like a lifeline. That's what I say, it's like a lifeline, is that you're reaching back, and then you're bringing those teachings in into today. Ambe majada jibwa bidavan Miigam'agan gana kengo ba Miigam'agan gana kengo ba Ambe majada jibwa bidavan Miigam'agan gana kengo ba Miigam'agan gana kengo ba Ambe majada jibwa bidavan Miigam'agan gana kengo ba Miigam'agan gana kengo ba Ambe majada jibwa bidavan Miigam'agan gana kengo ba Miigam'agan gana kengo ba. I got a new microphone, so I hope that sounded okay. So the song really it's supposed to make you feel good. So if you did it the right way, That's how it's supposed to make you feel. So I work with students, and as many of us do. And like I said earlier, they're asking questions, and they've been suffering through grief and loss, and just looking for their way. So one of the teachings that I've been able to lift up in my own way is the Anishinaabe life path, life road teachings. And what we call the forever road, Miigam'agan. And in those 7 stages of life, which is also, we also know this as the red road, and that's an east to west path across the earth. When we think of the red road, the way I understood the teaching from is it goes back to that red color standing. So that one that stayed close to the creator and stayed and kept staying to his grandfather. And as a result of that, love and connection was given more gifts and more teachings. That was that one, that red color, red standing color. This is the life path is also, as I said earlier, is one of those gifts in our bundle that we know as Miigam'agan, and we're always trying to move in that way, in that movement, that gift of movement given to us as well by the 4 directions. And this lodge of life is also connecting the strings of life together. The primary movement and going forward, we also call that one, that concept, that spirit, Gespagewagi. So we're always trying to move in harmony creation. So the first stage of that life, when I'm sharing with students who are asking, who am I? Where do I come from? What's my name? What does my clan mean? I go back to this first stage, which is known as the good life. And in the coming from spirit to spirit walking on the earth, and how that earth flows is a really beautiful time, where the one who's being born even has their name before they get here. There was so much love by the creator for this one. So much love that the naming of the baby is there before they're even born. So that one that comes into the earth, which is, I always say it's you, right? You are that special being that was created, is at that stage of life, in the good life. That's where the parental responsibilities is really, really important. The baby is wanting to share love, pure love. And, you know, babies, they make you laugh and they make you smile, and they just make you feel like you've done something really good, something really, really special. And how we look after our children at this time, which is usually around 0 to 7-ish years old, is really going to have an impact on them for the rest of their life. And we all know that to be true for those of us who've come through some real challenges even in our elder life, we have to always look at those things that happened at that time, that we can remember those challenges, so that we can continue to do the good work. And I got sidetracked on that one. But in that time of the good life, when we think about Anishinaabe parents and how we're trying to pick up our teachings and how that might inform how we're looking after this child, even the creation of the Miigam'agan, which is the cradle board, is really a expression of love once again. And when even when we talk about love, we've learned it, and we've been taught that it's zage ode iwen. So it's emerging of the heart, that love. So that even the building and the bringing together of the Miigam'agan is an expression of love for creation, love for the baby. Because when you put the baby in the Miigam'agan and they're wrapped, the only thing that can move is their head and their eyes and their ears. And we're helping them. Not only was it a practical, but we're also helping them to develop their senses. And you can really tell when people have been raised that way by the way they are today, that they were in a Miigam'agan, that they were wrapped in that way, that expression of love, and also that way that can help their ability to observe and to hear and to see and to listen, to develop all of those 7 senses, is a real expression of love for the human being. And in that good lifetime as well, that 0 to 7 years for Ojibwe and Anishinaabe is a really important time to find that name that this one was given. And it's at that time when you'll look for a dreamer of names. So we've been taught that not just anybody can call that name, and you really need to develop that connection and relationship with the child, or it could be that it happens much later in life, or with the person, with the being, to develop that relationship with them so that they may have the capacity to hear the name that was given in the spirit, in the realm of the spirit, before you even came and came onto this road of life. So the good life is from 0 to 7-ish years old, and is the foundation for the rest of our life. And then the second level, or the second stage of life in the life road teaching, is the fast life. And that's generally known as that period up to adolescence, and all of those changes that that Anishinaabe is going to go through. And it's called the fast life because everything is coming at you really fast. Your body's changing, your thinking is starting to change, your physical being is starting to experience different desires. So that in the fast life, at every level of your being, there are changes that are happening and going on. And it's also, as parents, it's also a time for us to remember to keep talking to our children, to keep talking to young people, and to keep talking about the good life, Miigam'agan, and our values, our bundle of knowledge, and also to just let them know how much we love them and how much of a gift that they are to us. That's also in that when I shared my introduction, that's referring to the gifts that we've been given to share them, So that places of the fast life is about honesty. Those are honest feelings. Those are honest it's an honest stage of our life. And our parents, as parents, we have a really, really big role together in helping to ensure that our young people have what they need so that they can make informed decisions. It's generally at this time where students will start asking questions and stop, and they want to understand sort of the adolescent stages that they're at. And this is where they ask questions about, well, you know, what if I was adopted, or what about if I was didn't have my parents? And they start asking all those very valid and important questions. The next stage of the 7 of the life road teachings is the wondering and the wandering life, where they will go off. They'll go off, maybe leave home. Although I understand that most people are staying at home till they're like 28 years old. That was my experience. In that wandering life, of course, they'll go off looking and looking for what life is all about. And in this stage as well, so we've gone the good life, fast life, wandering life. In this stage as well, our connection to our grandparents is really critical, because those with our grandparents, it's about sharing, it's about giving back. And I can only use myself as an example, or I will use myself as an example, that in terms of sharing, I learned about this this from my grandmother. She shared the knowledge of how to harvest medicines, how to harvest animals. She shared the knowledge about how to behave, how to do the garden, all of those things out of pure love. And I didn't know it at the time, because I didn't know then. What I know now is she was giving back to me, but it was such a natural way of being that we were, and it was a natural way of working, so that you didn't notice what she was doing, but she was actually helping to give me all the ingredients that I needed to live a good life. It's how I believe it, 100%. So for us today, we may not have had those connections with our parents. We may not have had those connections with our grandparents. So how can we animate that, or how can we lift those values and teachings up if we aren't connected to that? Which is also something students will ask. So part of the answer is in looking for your name and looking for your clan, and also looking at those 7 stages of life, that forever trail, and where you may be along that trail, and what are those significant things that happened to you, and then look at it from that place. not looking at it like, well, I didn't have my parents or I didn't have my grandparents, but look at it in the ways of, well, what did you have? And what is it that you are looking for? How would you like to do it? So there's a multiple layers of teaching there. That's just in the wondering stage. And then next, the next stage is known as the truth life. And this is where ideally we'll have found our way and understand that bundle of knowledge, which is related to the Four Directions teaching of kindness, honesty, sharing, and caring. And this is that time in the truth life where we put all of those teachings together. And what we're doing is we're building that strength. We're building what we know as Zongide Iwin. It sounds pretty close to Zagidewin, but they're two different teachings. They're two different values. Zongide Iwin is speaking about to have courage. Some people say Zongide Iwin is to be brave, but it's your ability to be able to have courage and to be brave with kindness, Watis Iwin as your foundation. So you start to see things are repeating itself, and you're starting to see how teachings are connected to each other. Got sidetracked. The next stage that's in the life road teaching is the planning life, and this is the time when we would be raising our family. So we have the good life, we have the vision of the good life, the fast life, the understanding of the wandering life, the truth life, and all these ingredients. Now we're building this bundle even bigger, the spiritual bundle of raising a family and teaching kindness and respect. And also one of those questions is, well, what if I had babies in my fast life? How am I? So what if I had babies earlier than this? Because it sounds like you're talking about we have babies like in our 20s or our 30s. So we have to look once again at the stages of life and see how each stage might inform behavior, that we still have the ability every single day, which is also in the song, in the morning song, we still have the ability every single day to start over, to sweep away those things from yesterday and look into the length of our day and into the vision of our own future. And how can we reach back and lift up those things that we just may not have known about, because there may not have been any grandmothers, there may not have been any grandmothers around who shared this. So these are the things that we can do for our young people, is to connect them with grandparents. And we do that. We all do that. We may not be directly related, but we're always sharing and we're always working with young people, and as if they're our own. The other day, one of my colleagues, I was talking about how when she speaks, her life, her face lights up, and she has this light emanating off her, and which is how it for me, it is how it is when she presents. And she said to me, "Oh, thank you, my girl. Thank you, my girl." And I felt really, really emotional about that because, like many of us, I've been really lonely, holed up in this. My wood stove isn't kicking it right now, so I'm really cold here. But I felt really, really lonely. And she reminded me how big our circle is and the capacity of love that we are always sending to each other and sharing with each other in our circle and beyond that. So I want to say Chi Miigwech to her as well. And then there's the doing life where they have their own path and where this is where they would develop leadership. They could be developing their roles as healers, aunties. And then finally, I guess this must be the part of the life road that I'm at. I have to give myself a good talking to. So the last stage of the life road teaching, Miigam'agan is the elder life. And as an Anishinaabe would share that with us, that elder life goes back 2 generations from our grandparents to our grandchildren. And we have a responsibility to hold those strings of life and to keep giving back, to keep sharing and to keep connecting with the grandchildren as well in any way, in every way that we possibly can. And in that way, we've come full circle. This is the sharing, which is the strength, which speaks about our ability as people, as Anishinaabe people, to be, we're resilient. I'm not quite sure what that word means, but it means like we have everything. We've been able to pick up little pieces of teachings here and songs and life experience and pull that all together to not just for ourselves, but at our elder life now. It's to be able to share that with the knowledge, and this is my opinion as well, with the knowledge that what we're sharing has the potential to go 7 generations into the future. And one of my teachers has shared with us Gespagewagi, and that is the short form is like knowledge is eternal. But how I interpreted that when he spoke that in our lodge, Gespagewagi is that the work that we're doing and the responsibility for those teachings that we carry, we have to try to be able to share that in a way that it will be useful, that young people and people in general can find something in that ingredient to help them live a good life. And it may only be one thing, and it may be something that is important as trust, to be able to trust yourself and to be able to trust the knowledge that you have, and that you're going to be able to share this in a way. How I look at it is like kind of like a life preserver. You know, if you had a life preserver and it was filled up with all this knowledge, and don't you just wish that, remember lifesavers, that we could share that that's a responsibility. I guess I don't really have a choice, but I'm up for the task. And I've come full circle now, so I'm going through my own transitions. But I also encourage people to. The maple trees are running around now, and Auntie Gespagewagi running, and that sap water. I also encourage some people that are grieving right now to get just a cup of that sap water or fill up a jar and have it over a couple of days, and also to be grateful. Also to always remember when you receive that medicine that you talk to that tree, what it is that you're looking for, and you're grateful for their like I don't know what that word is, but unconditional love, just like it would be with a parent. Ideally with a parent, that unconditional love, that's that relationship with the earth, with the tree. It's like unconditionally, she keeps giving that medicine for us. Oh, we're going to give it to you again. And part of our responsibility is, how do we acknowledge that? How do we validate that? And how do we say, Chimigwech, Opchigogi Chimigwech, like the biggest thank you ever for my life. So I encourage, I have been encouraging students, if they can go out onto the maple harvesting. Cape is harvesting maple syrup right now, and I already have some orders in for that because I would love some of that. Although we do have some trees around here. And because the full moon is coming up as well, I encourage the, I personally don't have a gender on any of the teachings that I've been given. So I encourage people to put some water in a jar, and to put that in a place where now would be a good time where the moon and the sun can hit that water, and then to drink that water after that full moon visits us. And I've also been encouraging young people to understand the names of the medicine that you're using, why you're smudging, and also to remember to call that one's name when you're doing that, when you're looking for healing. And really, this is a time, Mukwagis is a time of strength. It's a time of celebration, and where we can lift up all of our stories and feel really good about being Anishinaabe, Hongwe, like really to really shine. So I think that's it for me. That's it for me. I am really very privileged to be working as well, along with my Hongwe relatives at the First Nations Technical Institute in Tyendinaga Mohawk territory, in working together and working side by side. We have been able to share teachings with pilots from all over Canada, all over Turtle Island. And it's a real privilege to be able to play a very small role in helping them to add to their bundle of knowledge. So I want to say I'm Opchigogi.
Thank you so much, Shelley. Just the teachings there are just, they have to be ingested. I'm glad this is being recorded because there's so much there to think about. I think so many pieces that we need to take away. Whatever piece is important to us individually to kind of work on the most is really what I see like myself from your teachings, looking at doing, because it's so strong, so much teachings there. Thank you so much. I'm going to go right and tell another story now. So if you were with us last night, you heard a lot of from Niskipisuwin about Gluskub and the lessons in which Gluskub taught us, and these sorts of lessons really were to make us better people. Sometimes watching and looking at other people's reactions to situations can teach us what to do and what not to do in those situations. So in honor of my grandmother and her mother, I'm going to tell a story about the creation of, I'm going to tell you a creation story. And I don't want to tell you what it's about, because then I'll tell you this, you'll know what the story is. But it has to do with Gluskub. And if you remember, Gluskub, he brings the truth. He talks the talk and walks the walk. But he also makes mistakes, and he also learns from those mistakes. And we really need to understand that in a lot of ways, this is the way we were taught. So Gluskub had a close brother who was Malsum, the wolf, and he called him, he went by the name Lox. And originally, they walked together before humans, as Gluskub was learning through his grandmother, and he was basically, going to teach us everything we needed to know, how to survive these winters, and how to survive the summers, and what to eat and what not to eat, and how to hunt and how to build. And when he was doing all this, we were going to benefit. So he and Lox, they were brothers. They were close. Nita, they were friends like a brother. And they existed side by side, and hunted together, and camped together, and played together. And eventually, humans joined in. And so Gluskub had a partner, and together they had 2 children. Also, at the same time, Lox had a partner, and together they had many, many children over time. And then there was a time when food was scarce. It was hard to come by. It wasn't as easy to access as it used to. These tough times did come and go. And sometimes it would end the life of people or animals in the process. Gluskub did everything he could to provide for his family. He wanted them to have something every single day to eat. That was his goal. And as humans, that's sort of what we need to do. But sometimes that's not possible. Lox was the same way, only they were a little more greedy. And Lox and Gluskub became bitter enemies, became opposites. Lox became the bad side of everything there was. And Gluskub just kept walking his walk and tried to do his best, avoiding that bad side. One day, it was sort of a rainy day, and the woods were quiet. All you could hear was the dripping rain. The birds, the animals were still. There wasn't much around, and Gluskub had come back from an unsuccessful hunt, and he's heading back to his home. He was really not feeling good, because it wasn't the first time in as many days that he had walked back into his village with nothing for his family to eat. And as he was coming down to this beach that was sort of like a crescent, there was a hill off to the side and the left. And to the right, it just went off into the forest. And this small little beach was quiet. There wasn't much there. There were logs laying there that had been washed up by the tide. So Glooskap sat down on one, just kicked his feet out in front of him, and he watched the waves come in. And he basically just was depressed. He had not been able to bring anything back to his family, and it was just a corner away that he was going to walk and let his partner and his two children know that there was going to be no food that night. They were going to be hungry again. He felt like a failure. And as he was sitting there, he saw Lox come, walked out of the woods. And he looked up and he saw Glooskap sitting there. And Glooskap looked over and saw him. And Lox just slowly turned around, put his head down and walked back into the woods. He also had come back from an unsuccessful hunt. He also could not bring food to his family. But the jealousy and the rivalry was created between the two was intense. So Glooskap looked out at the water and he was thinking, and he was talking to himself. He said, what can I do? What can I do to bring food to my family? And he heard this voice. And this voice came from the ocean. And it said, you could always take the hand of my daughter, bring her into your life, take care of her, nurture her. She looks like you. She looks like a human. And she's beautiful and innocent, very naive. She's young. Very young mind in the body of a woman. And Glooskap looked around. He didn't know what was talking to him. He didn't understand what was happening. All he could say was, I can't take your daughter's hand. I have a partner and I have two children. And the voice said, well, if you take my daughter's hand, every single morning, there'll be a basket on the shore, on the sand here. A basket woven of red willow. That woman's medicine is strong. You pick up that basket every morning and you bring it back here every night. And whatever you think of for food, whatever you want from the abundance of the ocean, you reach into this basket and it will be there. You may not see it at first. You may wish for pollock and you reach in and it's there as much as you need. You may wish for clams, although they can't talk to you and you can't hear what they're saying, but you reach in and they're there. Whatever you desire from the abundance of the ocean will be in that basket. And your family will never go hungry again. All you have to do is take my daughter's hand. Glooskap said, that sounds like a great idea. That sounds like a good plan. I think I'm going to go back and talk to my partner about this. So he did. He was happy. He felt like there was hope. And he stood up and he went into the edge of the forest around the corner to where his lodge was. And he told his partner about this deal. Immediately, he was sent back to that beach to decline the offer. He said, but I will have until the morning to give the answer. She said, you go back now and you sit on that beach until the morning. Can't believe you even came to me with that question. She said, I'm here and we have children. And he said, yes, that's right. So he walked back. It's a long night when you're sitting there watching the ocean, the moon shining down. And so he sat there all night. And in the morning, he was met with another voice that said, I heard you're going to take my daughter's hand. And he said, no. He said, no, I have to decline. And he said, "Who is your daughter anyway?" And the voice said, "She is Dawn." And he realized this was not any human. This was not any child, not any daughter, not any woman. It was the child of the ocean and the sun when it meets every single morning before that sun comes up. This was Dawn herself. And so he couldn't believe it. He's trying to process this. He said, this Dawn, she's amazing." And so as he was standing there with his hands on his hips, wondering what was happening, somebody came up beside him and hooked his arm, and he looked, and it was a beautiful, beautiful woman. And she was carrying a basket woven of red willow. And he thought of cod, and he thought of pollock, and he thought of haddock. And when he looked in that basket, he could see it. He walked back home and let her go into the house with his partner, and he started to build his own house off to the side because he knew he was in trouble. He knew he needed his own space, that he wouldn't be given a choice. And so his partner took Dawn into her house and treated her as a daughter, brought her up, taught her. She had the body of a woman, but she was very young in mind. Again, she was Dawn. And over time, food started to come back. Animals started to move back in the area. Things were getting better again. And Dawn was rescuing baby animals and raising those animals as her own children because she loved them. And those children that she raised lived among the area of Gluskab and his family. Eventually, she moved into the lodge that he made, and he moved back into his house with his family. And they took care of Dawn. She was part of their family. Every morning, the abundance of the ocean was in that basket, until one day, Gluskab's partner said, "I'm really getting hungry for that red meat now. We need that. We need that in our bodies. And, although it's great to have all the abundance of the ocean, we need the red meat." Gluskab said, "I'll go hunting. Tomorrow, I'll go off into the distance. I'll walk for one day, far away from here, so I'm not near any of Dawn's children, and that she raised the animals, and I'll hunt beyond this area, see what I can bring back." Well, little did he know that Lox was over in the woods listening, and he heard all this, and Lox had a plan. He had a plan to attack with all Lox's children, all these wolves. They would attack, and while Gluskab was nowhere around, and they would get revenge. Gluskab was prospering and they were not. It was jealousy. So off Gluskab went the next day. He walked for a full day, and that night he sat down and he lit a fire, and he was warming himself and getting ready to prepare his food when he realized he had another special, what we would call magical ability. He could hear when his family was in trouble from no matter what distance he was away. And he could hear destruction. He could hear pleas for help and screams like somebody was being attacked. And he also discovered he had another ability he didn't know he had, that when his family was being threatened or he felt they were being attacked, he could go through the forest like the wind. Nothing could stop him. And he did. He went through the forest like the wind. It took him a day to get there. It took him seconds to get back. And when he got back, he saw the destruction of Lox and his family. They had killed some of the baby animals, the helpless ones that Dawn was raising. He could see his partner and his children huddled in the corner of their lodge. Dawn's lodge was destroyed. Where was she? He was looking around. He had his staff with him. He always carried his stick. But he looked and he could see way out in the ocean, Dawn was swimming, holding one of her babies. She was swimming with one hand, yelling for her mother and father. That place where the sun and the ocean meet every single morning. Behind her was Lox and two of his children. They were chasing her out into the ocean. Gluskab's anger for him, for Lox and the children, was so intense that Gluskab raised his staff. And with his anger, he just put it all forward in a flash of light, just came out of nowhere, smoke. And when it cleared, he couldn't believe what he saw. His anger was so directed at Locke's and Locke's children that he actually had anger go towards Dawn. It was uncontrolled. She had turned into a giant island. She was now way out in the ocean, and behind her was three other islands, Locke's and two other smaller ones. Gluskub swam out and knelt on the shores, what is now the shores of what remains of Dawn. He knelt there and he put his face in his hands and he cried tears, and they dripped through his fingers and hit the soil of Dawn. And from that soil came the children of Dawn, the Passamaquoddy of that area were born. The children of Dawn existed. To this day, that island sits out there, still there. And the women of the Wabanaki tribes use that island for their ceremonies. That island is called Grand Manan, and that is the spirit of Dawn. That is the place where she is. So I wanted to share that story. It's another story that really talks about Gluskub and sacred places to us. So thank you for listening. So I am your final speaker. And I should say our final speaker for this morning has not arrived yet, and we do end at pretty soon. So what we're going to do instead is we're going to go to Niskipisuwin. Niskipisuwin's going to do a song for us, and that will lead us into our lunch break. And so after Niskipisuwin sings this song, I'll just give you a little quick rundown of this afternoon, and we'll take a break. So Niskipisuwin.
Quick way, release as well. I've been asked to sing us out this morning, and this song, this is actually the very first song, very first Passamaquoddy song that, in my memory, I can remember learning as a child. I remember, hearing it at powwows and in ceremonies that I had been to at that time, or up until that time. And I remember, I think a little bit, starting to learn some of the words in school. But what I really remember about it is I remember being about, 5 or 6 years old, and we had this giant dirt pile at the end, because we lived at the end of our road on the reservation, which was like the end of that new part of the housing project. So there was this big dirt pile where they had moved all of the earth that had been moved to build all of our houses. And I was playing there with my little Tonka dump truck. And I remember singing the words of this song and doing my best to remember them and the melody, and kind of thinking about what they meant, and thinking about how it was often sung for giveaways as well, this song. And thinking, even as a little kid, I was like, well, I don't have much to give away. I'm 5. I don't own very many things, but I guess if I was at a giveaway, I would give away my dump truck, because maybe I could probably get another one, and then it might go to somebody who didn't need it. And I just remember thinking, or who did need it, and didn't have a dump truck of their own. So I've kind of always associated this song with that memory, and it's one of the first ones that a lot of children learn as well. And it's a great song for helping you learn the language, for helping our youth learn the language. So this song is called To All My People. And there are many different verses. It's one of the songs that's designed where you can keep adding. But to all my people or for all my children, kind of two different titles it's been called, but I'm sure many of you might recognize it, especially if you've been to this ceremony before. Away, hey, away, hey, 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 away, hey, away, hey, 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 away, hey, away, hey, away, hey, away, away, hey, 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 still there, but mouse away no more, yo. Still there, but mouse away no more, yo. Jige go son skate comic. Nagapsi dek ni jano. Will on you you'd see again. Oh hey hey oh hey 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 oh hey hey oh hey 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 oh hey hey oh hey hey oh hey hey away away hey still there happy Jake yo still there happy Jake yo Jake go son skate comic Nagapsi dek ni jano Milanyo yod psi dege away hey away hey 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 away hey away hey 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 away hey away hey away hey away away hey hey still deski da big gillo still deski da big gillo Jiggy go son skate comic Nagapsi dek ni jano Milanyo yod psi dege away hey away hey 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 away hey away hey 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 away hey away hey away hey away away hey hey Pseudek chichi twinok chichi yellow yo Pseudek chichi tuinok chichi gelua oyo. Jige goson skate comic nagapsidek ni jano. Milanyo yod psidege. Away hey ya. Away hey ya hey ya hey. Away hey ya. Away hey ya hey ya hey. Away hey ya. Away hey ya. Away hey. Away hey hey. So there was his up. Gelawao. So there was his up. Gelawao. Jige go son skate comic. Nagapsidek ni jano. Milanya yod psidege. Away hey ya. Away hey ya hey ya hey. Away hey ya. Away hey ya hey ya hey. Away hey ya. Away hey ya. Away hey. Away hey hey. So de boo de big. Gelawao. So de boo de big. Gelawao. Jige go son skate comic. Nagapsidek ni jano. Milanya yod psidege. Away hey ya. Away hey ya hey ya hey. Away hey ya. Away hey ya hey ya hey. Away hey ya. Away hey ya. Away hey. Away hey hey hey. So that you blog no. Gelawao yo. So that you blog no. Gelawao yo. Jige go son skate comic. Nagapsidek ni jano. Milanya yod psidege. Away hey ya. Away hey ya hey ya hey. Away hey ya. Away hey ya hey ya hey. Away hey ya. Away hey ya. Away hey. Away hey hey. So that a mouse so we know Gelawao yo. So that a mouse so we know Gelawao yo. Jige go son skate comic. Nagapsidek ni jano. Milanya yod psidege. oh yeah, hey ya, oh yeah, hey ya, hey ya, hey, oh yeah, hey ya, oh yeah, hey ya, hey ya, hey, oh yeah, hey ya, oh yeah, hey ya, oh yeah, hey. Away, away, ah, hey, ah, hey, ah, hey.
Ooh, will we one?